Thanks for joining us for another episode of Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here at the News Forum, where all voices matter. In Boom and Bust's continuing dialogue with past and present parliamentary budget officers, I'm pleased to welcome interim PBO Jason Jacques to the program. He'll fill us in on all things budgetary. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I guess I'm neither past nor present, kind of a
You're
interregnum.
interim. We've never had an interim before. So there you go. It's great to
There
have
you
you on the
go.
program. You've been very,
Yeah.
very active, including, as I understand it, you were before the Senate Finance Committee earlier this week. What did you talk about there?
So in the case of the Senate Finance, I would say effectively it ends up being all budget and all fiscal related issues all the time.
Right.
So at Senate Finance, of course, two key things are coming up. Senators, of course, are on top of everything when it comes to budgeting and finance, something you're probably intimately familiar with, probably too familiar with. But I think there are two key issues that end up coming up part of the discussion. The first one was around the question of fiscal anchors. So effectively, that's the way in which the federal government kind of puts guardrails and kind of outlines how they're going to manage the economy and how they're going to manage the budget. And of course, there are some questions with respect to the changes that the government has put into place or they've made with respect to their fiscal anchors. And then the second key issue at the Senate Finance Committee that came up more than once was the plan for the government around their cuts. So the $60 billion worth of cuts to federal operating spending, 40,000 layoffs across the federal public service. We had sent in a request to have some more clarity around that. And the government, something that I think you were familiar with potentially from Budget 2012, the government demurred on releasing some of the information to us or any of
Right.
the information to us.
Right. Yes, myself and Kevin Page got into very uh, elaborate discussions on that very issue. You're quite right. But yeah, it's still some things never change in Ottawa, perhaps. Let's go to some of these issues, though, because I think they're kind of elemental to your job and to what the public does want to hear about. So I guess the first thing, as the parliamentary budget officer, you did do an analysis of the federal budget. Can you enlighten our viewers on what that analysis found?
Sure. So as part of our mandate, set in legislation is an obligation that once the budget is tabled, we're to go through it and highlight issues for parliamentarians. And usually, we'll go through and we don't do the quick take. We do what we like to refer to it as the thoughtful take. So as opposed to coming out of the budget lockup the day of, having a quick quick assessment of where things stand and expressing our opinion, we took about 10 days or so. There are 30 economists in the office, working for about 16 hours a day, sitting down, going through the numbers ourselves, and doing some of our own calculations with respect to our take on the budget. And of course, one of the first things that kind of stands out, I think everyone's familiar with the increased deficit that the government reported in comparison to where we were last year.
Right.
One of the first things that we identified was really where that increased deficit comes from. It's primarily on the operating side. So a
Right.
lot of what's really driving the spending is not necessarily where the government says that they're focused on the capital side. It's very much an increase in spending. Two-thirds of the additional spending that's leading to the much higher deficit is actually coming on the operating side rather than the capital investment
Mm.
side. So that was one of the first things that we highlighted. And of course, that ends up being important because, as I mentioned before, the government also announced that they're changing their fiscal anchors, where they didn't actually announce it. They just said the fiscal anchors are being changed. So previously there was a debt to GDP anchor, something that had been in place for about 30 years, going back over, regardless of the flavor of government. It was something that was in place, something that continues to be in place in a lot of other jurisdictions. And the government has cut that anchor, and now they've moved in the direction of new fiscal anchors, one of which is balancing the operating budget. And we highlighted that as part of the operating budget, of course, it's impacted by the capital budget. So there are two sides of it:
Right.
capital spending, operating spending. And we highlighted that the definition that they're using for capital spending is pretty broad. It's a lot broader than what you'd see than is used in other jurisdictions overall. And of course, a broader definition of capital spending means that it's easier to actually balance your operating budget and respect that fiscal anchor.
Yeah, and I want to delve into that a little bit more deeply after the break because this is very important in terms of whether the budget is transparent and open and whether it can achieve the goals set out. But we're going to take a little break with our guest. We'll be back after these messages.